Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we will explore the cause and effect of just saying yes in your everyday life or in business. I will dig into topics that are not just stimulating, but will challenge you to be better in everything you do. The podcast is based on the simplicity of saying yes to opportunities you might encounter every single day. I'm your host, Jim Riley. Join me in my first series titled Blue Collar Redefined. Hello and welcome to the show of this week's Answer is Yes podcast. Appreciate everybody's patience. We kind of took a little bump in the road last week with New Year's, so this is actually our first show of the New Year's for the Answer is Yes. We did have our first Baja Session show that we put up online the other day with Juan Carlos from Baja Voyager, so I hope everybody enjoyed that, and this is our first show of the year. You know, in the full art of disclosure here, I got to say kudos and credit to all the parents out there. More than likely, I'm talking to some moms and the incredible level of patience that they have over their kids and their daily lives. I'm playing Mr. Dad today, and I got to say, I'm frustrated. It is not easy to run a household with two little girls, trying to feed them, keep them clothed, especially when it's cold outside. And we got a new puppy around the house, so I'm pretty much was trying to compose myself before I came in and recorded this intro to this week's show. But just being honest with everybody and giving credit where credit's due to those of you out there that are parents. I'm sure you can understand where I'm coming from. So it's actually perfect for this week's guest, Julien Hayes, who talks about recentering yourself every morning and going into your day with a plan, focused, a little bit of meditation, and all those things that get you centered. So I might have to take a midday break and do that. It's too early to grab some Baja United wines, I'll say that. Anyways, I'm off and running for 2019 and excited about what this year has in store for me. I'm doing some life coaching work for David Meltzer, so if that's something you're interested in learning a little bit more about, please reach out to me. You can get me through social media, or you can email me at jriley@bajaunitedgroup.com. Would love to hear from you. And we've got another great guest coming up next week. His name is John Mallett. He's got a lot of great things to say, a huge following, so I look forward to bringing him to everybody. And just having a good time, like I said, beginning of the year. So without further ado, I'd like to jump into this interview with Julien. He called in, and we spent some time together, and I hope that you take something away from it. Thanks. Well, Happy New Year. It is 2019. I hope everybody celebrated safe and sound New Year's Eve. It's amazing. I'm looking through all the Instagram, social media posts, and everybody's going to crush it in 2019. I hope that they do. Just remember what we talk about on the show. It's about actually doing the work. It's fun to say it and post it, and that's the start of, putting an obligation out there to do something, but you have to do the work. So hopefully we're going to be able to help you out on this show with our guests and the information that we provide here. So keep listening and sharing with friends and relatives if you like what we're talking about. And I'm constantly searching for the right people to have on the show, and sometimes they come to me. And, that's the best way because they've got something to say. And that is the case with today. I've got a fantastic guest that reached out to me in an original way, which was through a YouTube video. And I was so impressed with that. I thought, I've got to have this person on the show. And even more so after I listened to his story and what he does for a living. So I've got Julien Hayes on the line, and I'd like to welcome him to the show. Julien, how are you?
Man, I'm doing fantastic, Jim. Thank you for having me on this show. It's a pleasure to be here.
One of the things that I really enjoy about the podcast life, if you will, is the people that you get to meet, not only online, but on the phone, but really learning people's stories and what they do. And you're no exception to that. Just browsing through your website, as well as hearing a little bit of your story on the YouTube video you sent me. You've got a fascinating background. So I'd like to just jump into that. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about where life and business started for you and how you got there, and then we'll work into your career in present day.
Okay. Well, to start off, we have to go back and visit teenage Julien.
Yeah.
And I grew up in an environment where health is not necessarily something that's at the forefront. Entrepreneurship is not necessarily something at the forefront. And thinking about health, I played basketball. So luckily that kept me in good shape because my diet was not good. My pregame meal before basketball was McDonald's. It was a 20-piece chicken nuggets and a supersized fry.
Yeah.
So I was safe to say I did not know anything about wellness. But one thing stuck out to me was that there was an older gentleman who was playing basketball with us one day, and he was running up and down the court just as gracefully as all us teenagers. And that just stuck out to me because up until that point, there's a typical trajectory that I saw adults live through in their life. And it was pretty good health in your 20s and then slowly going downhill from there until ultimately getting some type of chronic disease, which diabetes and various cardiovascular problems runs in my family.
Uh-huh.
And so this guy just changes my paradigm about this. And so I had to ask him, like, what's your secret or something? He said simply that age is merely just a representation of how long you've been alive in this world. But what really matters is how you treat your body and what you put into your body. That's what ultimately matters. And that stuck with me throughout college. And inside college, I really had this fascination for the human body to learn that I could control the trajectory of the quality of my life. And so fast forward, this leads me to medical school in New York. And I want to be an eye surgeon. But when I was in New York, so I'm from Nashville, Tennessee.
Uh-huh.
And Nashville is very conservative compared to New York. And so I meet people in New York that are just doing all sorts of careers that are very unconventional to me. They're combining passions. And that seed was planted in my head. And I remember during a 3-hour anatomy exam of just thinking, maybe I should say yes to this adventure. Because I've always wanted to write, but I never told anyone.
Uh-huh.
I've always wanted to travel more, but I've never really told anyone. And quite frankly, I didn't think there was a way unless I followed this path first to get myself secure. And I couldn't let it go. So I'd come home after my first year, and I just wake up in the middle of the night, I walk upstairs, I look up at the sky, and I just knew it then that I'm not going back to school. I have to give myself this opportunity to pursue this. And I got a bunch of crazy looks when I told people the next day or what I was going to do. But there's like this whisper that I just kept hearing, and I didn't want to look back 20 years later
Mm-hmm.
and think what if. And so that's presently led me to what I do now, which is I help business owners and entrepreneurs. I help them create energy with predictability, and I write for columns such as Inc. and Entrepreneur. And so I get to combine the best of both worlds, my love for health and then my love for writing and just sharing a message.
Yeah. I want to step back for a second because, providing resources for people or just getting out of their comfort zone is extremely important to what we're talking about on this show. And you mentioned that McDonald's diet, and what's interesting about that's not very unique. There's a lot of people out there that's what their diet consists of. And, it's concerning. My wife actually grew up on a McDonald's diet, and I found that very interesting. We didn't grow up on a McDonald's diet in our house, but we did grow up on a poor diet where it wasn't important to anybody. And, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think that our health, as you say on your website, in our diets, that's a premium investment, right? A premium investment is what you say.
Yes, it's at the center front. If you think about it, I always use this thing of telling people that picture the health as the head of the octopus, and every other thing in life is basically those tentacles. And when that head, which is your health, is not operating optimally, those other areas of life are going to suffer or not be able to reach their potential.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't want to pick on McDonald's. There's a lot of bad food choices out there, including things that you can buy in the box stores and bring home and make and make them poorly by using bad ingredients. Sugars and corn syrups and too many carbohydrates and those things. So I'm not really necessarily wanting to pick on McDonald's, but I love the component of eating healthy and investing in your health because then all other things follow after that. And I see that that's a very important thing on your website. By the way, great job on your blog sources on your website. Looks like you've got almost 3 years worth of blogs about being healthy and fit and all those other things.
Yes, thank you for that. And there's so much more out there in terms of at the places I write, and it's fun. I guess I think the saying is, if you find work you love doing it, you never work a day of your life. I think it's something like that.
Yeah. So Julien, you talk about getting to New York and all these other opportunities come in front of you because you came from a conservative place like Nashville. And we've seen and heard a lot of stories from, students that get out of high school and they go into college and all of a sudden they change their master or their degrees 3 or 4 times because they see so many different opportunities. What went through your mind, or what was your decision process to ultimately decide to go in the direction that you did?
I think it's twofold. One is I've always been a reader of history and kind of fascinated with it. And number 2 is just that I know how fragile life is. Uh-huh. I've seen people just taken away suddenly. And I have this fear, I guess just due to those experiences, of not wanting to have regrets, and just realizing that most likely school was always going to be there. I can always go back to that if this other venture didn't fail. But the longer I delayed taking that chance, the more risk there was to fall into the comforts of the other world, mm-hmm. which will make it nearly impossible then to take that venture. So at my age, that was just a perfect opportunity, because I had to think of Ray Dalio's book. He calls these second and third order decisions. And so you're thinking beyond just how it affects you right now in the short term, mm-hmm. but you're thinking long term down the line, what are the consequences for making that decision?
If you don't mind, what age were you at when you were going through that thought process?
Mm-hmm. So I left New York, I was 26.
Okay. So, a lot of times we think if we're not doing something important by the time we're 21, 22, or in our mid-20s, we feel like we're not living up to what society says we should be doing. And I love that at that age, 26, you decide to take a different path and build a business around that and go out and take a risk. It sounds like you haven't looked back.
No, I haven't looked back, but I'm not going to lie that there's always tough moments. There's always moments of self-doubt. I think that's human nature. But for me, I think all the listeners have to find some source that kind of helps ground them. And with me, it's always been books. I've kind of adopted the authors and the characters from books as my mentors. So if I didn't have the mentors physically around me, I surrounded myself with books to do it. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you need to go back and continue your education, or do you feel like your resources in the books and the things that are available to you outside of school are enough?
Oh, right now, there's no need. There's no need. Honestly, if I was, there's so many good online courses and education, even from schools, that are accessible online now that you can literally learn from anywhere. The only reason I would need to go back to school is if I wanted to work with like some kind of surgery or something. But for what I really love to do, there's no need to. Mm-hmm.
And how are the critics in your world with you about, the lack of the finality, having a degree, or having that extended college education? And listen, by the way, I support 100% what you've done and where you're heading. I just want other people to mm-hmm. understand that there is an option to go off on your own, take some risks, step outside of your comfort zone, and build a business around information that's outside of the college walls.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think results speak for themselves, and consistently showing up and showing that you're knowledgeable in your area of expertise. And also kind of